tomorrow Tuesday.
Okay, start. Anything, whatever you like. So today we will have Kirtan by Brinda. She is moving to Seattle with her parents from San Diego. So yes, very nice. She does very nice Kirtan. Huh. Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatare Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasani Gaur Bhaktavinda
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Thank you, Mukunda. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining. I hope
Krishna
everybody
Mataji.
is now fully back in action. Everybody has power. Yeah. Prabhu, Shiva Prabhu, you have power now?
Yes, yes. No, power we have, Mataji.
Okay, okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So any
I thought you
reflections?
were asking everyone is powered after Kirtan.
That's also right. That's also right.
Yeah.
Yes, we are all powered after Kirtan. So what are our reflections after this humongous Seattle storm? Any reflections from how we have studied, what we have studied so far? Anything to think about, reflect on? I'm pretty sure Punya Prabhu has some reflections to share.
I was in Austin, so I heard some stories about
Yes.
Seattle.
I want to hear from what you heard, what it made you feel like.
So I was not really introspecting or reflecting on that, but I was just thinking about some time back when I was in Seattle. Austin had similar outages. I was just feeling that I was always on the other side with the grace of Krishna.
Yes, yes. Krishna protects. That's the
Yes,
one of the key
yes,
reflections.
Mataji.
One thing that I was reflecting on is we have studied long time back problems, right? Like 4 real problems and 3 secondary problems. And we have read that how when material nature acts, sometimes we are completely helpless. And we could see that how we were helpless, right? Like phones were not working. We were completely at the mercy of others. So sometimes we think about all these material advancements and all these things, but when higher power acts, all these material advancements, everything is almost useless and waste.
Pretty much, yeah.
So,
But we are lucky in a way that because we are in Redmond in this part of the city, the wires are all underground.
yeah.
So that's the reason why we're kind of saved.
Well, we can say that we are safe because the wires are underground.
Yes.
Or we can also say that there could be other reasons why we were saved, right? I mean, definitely
Yeah,
at an external level, that
Definitely,
is
yeah.
what seems like it. But at the other level, it also seems like if something wanted to not spare us,
Yeah,
then
it'll happen.
it'll happen. So, yeah.
Great.
So, with that note, I think last time when we met last week, we spent quite a lot of more time on reflection, which I think is also very important and needed. So, let's continue our studies of the systematic study of Bhagavad Gita. Let's start with our invocation prayers. Let me share my screen.
Is it recorded?
Yeah, it's recording. 1 second. Can you all see my screen? Okay.
Yes, Mataji.
Let's, okay, let's start. Together we can recite Om Ajnana Timirandasya
Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya
Chakshur
Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri
Tasmai
Gurave Namaha
Shri
Sri
Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Manobhishtam
Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa
Swagadamai
Kadahyam Tadati Swapadantikam
Vandeham
Vandeham
Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam
Srirupam Sagrajatam
Sahagana
Sahaganam
Radha
Savitam Tam Sajivam
Sadvaitam
साद्वैतं
Savadhutam
परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं
Shri
श्रीराधा
Radha
कृष्ण
Krishna
प्रादान् सहगणं
Sahagana
ललितां
Lalita
श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्याम् हे
He
कृष्ण
Krishna
करुणा
Karuna
सिन्धु
Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate
जगत्पते
Gopesha
गोपेशान्तिका
Gopikanta Namostute
नमस्तुते
Kanchana
कञ्चन
Gaurangi
गौराङ्गी राधे
Vrindavaneshwari
वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि
Pranamami
हरिप्रिये
Hari Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
कल्पाकल्पतरुभयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां
Patitanam
पावनेभ्यो
Pavanebhyo
वैष्णवेभ्यो
Vaishnavebhyo
नमो नमः
Namaः Jai Shri Krishna
श्रीकृष्ण
Chaitanya
चैतन्य
Prabhu
प्रभु
Nityananda
नित्यानन्द श्री
Yadvaita
अद्वैता गदाधर
Gadadhara Srivasadi
श्रीवासादि
Gaura
गौरभक्तवृन्द
Hare
हरे
Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna, Krishna
कृष्ण
Krishna,
कृष्ण
Hare Hare,
हरे हरे
Hare
हरे
Rama,
राम
Hare
हरे
Rama,
राम राम
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, we are doing Bhagavad Gita. What chapter are we in? Chapter 5. What is chapter 5?
कर्म संन्यास योग
Yes, Karma Yoga, right? And how is this different from the third chapter, which is also entitled Karma Yoga? So, as you can see, chapter 3 is titled Karma Yoga. And then we also have chapter 5, which is titled Karma Yoga. The only difference is that when we are talking about chapter 5, we are just not talking about Karma Yoga, we are talking about how to act with Krishna consciousness. And we are differentiating between Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga. Like, what is real Karma Yoga? That is what we are discussing. So, if you remember, we had discussed up until 11th verse. So, let's start with that. Let's do a recap here. So, we will recite the verse and then quickly look at the 11th verse and then move on. Kayena manasa buddhya
कायेन मनसबुद्ध्या
केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि
केवलैरिन्द्रियैः
योगिना कर्म कुर्वन्ति
योगिना
सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये.
कर्मसङ्गं तत्त्वार्थये
Right. So the translation is the yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. So the question here is, what is purification? What are we trying to purify? Any thoughts? We always hear this term, right? Like we have to purify ourselves. What are we purifying? Like the body?
thoughts
Purify our thoughts,
Detachment,
yes.
heart and soul.
Heart,
detachment
soul.
from material objects.
Sorry, say that again, Prabhu.
Detachment from material objects.
Yes, detachment from material objects, but how? Last time when we met, we were discussing detachment and we were discussing how detachment can be very hard because when we are trying to just subdue our senses or detach superficially, sometimes those desires come back very, very strong. So,
Yeah,
how can we detach?
by directing our senses to Krishna consciousness.
By directing our senses to Krishna consciousness. What's the practical way of doing that?
We are not being
Man,
God.
Yes, okay. So thinking of that, we are not the only doer, right? We are not the doer. Yes. What else?
Through service of
Through
Lord.
service. Yes. So generally in the material world, the senses, right? The senses will see some sense object, right? Like I see a rasgulla and now I'm attracted to the rasgulla. I want to taste the rasgulla. So my sight is engaged, and now my tongue also wants to be engaged, right? So generally, when we see, let our senses be attached to sense objects, it leads us to misery eventually. Because now let's say you don't stop at eating 1, 2, you eat 20. Then eventually, first of all, the taste will go away, and then your stomach will go away, right? So generally what we see is when we overindulge or when we are not able to control our senses, generally senses lead to misery, right? But what we have to do, or what we have to learn to do, is to ensure how we can still engage our senses, but such that the senses don't lead to misery.
Well, that higher taste you're talking?
Higher taste, but also when we use our senses in the service, then at that time the senses no longer cause bondage. So this is what is purification. This is what is called purification. Generally, people will perform spirituality because of 4 reasons or 4 motivations. Any thoughts on what could those be? Why do people perform spirituality? Yes, 7th chapter. What's the lowest level? What's the lowest level why people perform spirituality? Or is the motivation for people to perform spirituality? Fear. Fear. Yeah? Because we are fearful that of whatever we possess or whatever we don't possess, we are fearful of things. So we perform spirituality. The next, a little bit elevated than that, is desires. I want this, I want that. And so people many times will perform spirituality to get what they desire, right?
I thought they get into spirituality to lose the desire.
No, but many a times what happens in India? Why do we go to Tirupati, or why do people go to? So I also know that there are some temples in India. They are called Visa Ganesh. That Ganesh, yeah, you have heard about it, yeah. So what is the purpose of
Visa
that?
Balaji is there.
Visa
In Hyderabad.
Balaji is
Visa
there.
Balaji is there.
Yeah. So what's the purpose of that?
Obtain the visa. So they
Obtain the visa, right? So what is visa? This is desire, right? You want to enjoy in this material world. You're not happy where you are, so you have desires. You want to fulfill those desires, so you come to spirituality. Now, have you seen those people who go to these temples? Do they feel superficial or artificial? No, their dedication and surrender is sometimes feels even more than what it may seem that it should be, right? They are so dedicated in the following the rituals and following the process. Their emotions are so high, right? Sometimes you will also see people crying. But what is it for? It's for fulfilling their own desires. So fear, the next level is desire. Okay, I want some desires to be fulfilled. Higher than that, sometimes people perform spirituality out of a sense of duty. Most of the time, this is the stage we are in, right? We have promised someone that we will, like you may have made a promise that you will come to the Sunday class to yourself, right? So you may like it or not, or you may want it or not, you and show up, right? I may have made some promises to my spiritual master, and sometimes we just do it out of duty. There may be no love, no motivation. So at this level, it may feel very dry. But the next level up is love, which is the highest, right? At this point, there's no duty, no desires, no fear. You're just performing something out of love, right? So this is the highest level. So when we can purify our senses out of these 3, fear, desire, duty, and just perform out of love, that's when we say the senses are getting purified as we are elevating ourselves through these processes, right? So this is what the translation for this 11th verse of the 5th chapter mainly was. See, it says, right here, what does it say? Kevaler indriye rapi. Right? So generally, if you have to progress in spirituality, it is said to not engage the senses. But here, Krishna is saying, even with the senses. Engage the senses. Hare Krishna Mataji. Right? So Krishna is saying engage the senses. So we are not saying don't engage the senses. We don't have to. There's a very contrasting verse in second chapter. Prabhu, which is the verse where withdraw the senses, the turtle withdraws the senses? Second chapter, right? Second chapter. 50th verse, I think. Oh, what happened? Yeah, 58.
When Arjuna asks what are the qualities of Stita Prajna, then
Yeah.
he explains
Yeah.
that example.
Yeah, so see here the translation says, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as a tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So doesn't it seem contradictory? This and third and fifth chapter. Here Krishna is saying, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even the senses. How do we understand this?
Remaining times, this is what we're supposed to do. After fulfilling our needs with the senses, the level whatever is permitted, then we have to use this second for serving the Lord.
Actually, if we are following this path of purification, this verse is for people who are attached to sense gratification. So for them, Krishna is saying withdraw your senses, don't use your senses. But then if we are working towards purification, then engage all you have, body, mind, intelligence, whatever you can. Sometimes our intelligence and mind may not be fully in our control, right? And sometimes we should be acting with intelligence, but we act according to the mind. So in that case, Krishna is saying just forget about the mind and intelligence, just use your senses. Engage your senses and purification will happen.
Also, can we look at it as a favorable and unfavorable condition? When it is a favorable condition, we should use all our resources towards the purification, and which is not unfavorable, we should withdraw the senses.
Give an example, Prabhu. What can be unfavorable?
In a given situation, like so when we are going in a situation that we need to go out, so say suppose when you are going out for a place, when you have given a chance to spend some time outside, so we have to use the senses. So which is favorable to Krishna consciousness, say like exploring the books, say suppose if there is a place like explore the books where we have like all the acharyas written books.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. Rather looking at the places which is not allowing the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, that's a good point. Like when the situations are unfavorable, maybe at that point we can withdraw our senses. But eventually we will learn that even in unfavorable situations, how can we use our senses and make the situation favorable? Right? Like, like I was listening to I was listening to Radha Govind Maharaj, and he is perfect in connecting material situations to spirituality. And they gave such a nice example. So we see like when we enter the mall, the doors open automatically, like you step in and the doors in all these stores open. So Maharaj compares that to, oh, this is how when Krishna was born and when Vasudev was carrying Krishna, this is how the jail doors must have opened automatically just by his stepping in front of the door. So now whenever I'm entering Fed Meyer, it makes me remember of, oh, this is what Maharaj used this term for. So you are going grocery shopping and Maharaj is making you remember Krishna. So with such like everyday examples, sometimes even mundane tasks can be connected to Krishna.
Way of telling me.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's continue from here. Okay, so 12th verse. Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayukta kamakarena phale sakto nibadhyate. Nupur Mataji, read the translation, please. Make it bigger. Is it too small? Good. Bigger.
The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes
Entangled. Yeah. So a steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. Not even peace. Like we are all hankering for peace. But here Krishna is saying unadulterated peace. What does unadulterated mean? Like pure, not
Pure.
contaminated. Exactly, right? So it's not just, we don't just get peace of the material world. It's uncontaminated peace. So here in this verse, so in 5.6, when if we look at 5.6, so we just covered this verse 5.6. So here Krishna is saying, merely renouncing all activities yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So here what two things are we comparing? Krishna is comparing renouncing all activities with person engaged in devotional service, right? So which two yogas? Karma yoga and Jnana yoga, right? So here Krishna is comparing Karma yoga and Jnana yoga, and he started 5th chapter by saying both are equal, but Karma yoga is easier and superior. Now see what Krishna is saying here. A steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. Okay, so far still Karma yoga. Whereas a person who is not in union with divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. What is this? So Nishkam Karma Yoga with one who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits. Yeah, fruitive worker. Right? So just before in 5.6, we were comparing Karma Yoga with Jnana Yoga. Now Krishna is comparing Karma Yoga with the fruitive worker. How those two compare and contrast. So let's read the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Can somebody read from the beginning here, because this is what is important up until here? Sridhar Prabhu.
The difference between a
Oh, go ahead, Prabhu.
the difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work.
Right. So basically, when we are acting just in karma, just with karma, right? No karma yoga, not nishkam karma yoga. When we are just acting with this conception of I want to enjoy the fruits, then this kind of work mostly leads to bondage, because we are constantly entangled in this cycle of I work, I enjoy, I become entangled, I work, I enjoy, I become entangled. But when we are working in karma yoga, the same work becomes the cause of our liberation. So externally, that's why many a times we may not see that the devotee is working any differently. They also go to work, they also do all the things, also tend to the yard, also tend to everything. But what is different?
You don't keep the fruits. Basically, they think it's all.
But many a times, like how do you see that in like very little like mundane activities? Yes, they don't keep the fruits, but does it also mean that we get some salary and we don't use it at all in our own household activities?
You can, but then you think that it is not something that you got it, but it's something that given by love.
Okay, so you don't think of yourself as the owner. Good, very nice. What is but what is still the difference in when we are performing these two kinds of activities? The one which is performed by a karma yogi and a person who is a fruitive worker.
We do that in obedience
Hmm.
because I do not own it, because I did not do something on my own.
Yes.
Because I did it based on the skill which I got from Supreme. So the outcome of it, the salary or whatever, I also use it in a similar way.
Yeah, so basically your consciousness, the motivation, it's an internal thing, right? Externally it seems the same, exactly the same. But what's different is what's internal. Your consciousness is very different in performing the same action, right? Okay. Yeah, let's read a little bit here because it's talking about anxiety and this is very, very practical as well.
The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the results of an activity is explained as being once functioning in the conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead.
Yeah, right. So when we are working with this consciousness, then the anxiety over the results automatically goes away. Because does it mean we also don't endeavor hard enough? Right? For the sake of duty, we should continue, but then the anxiety of, oh, results are not coming shouldn't be there because we don't own the results anyway. Right?
But sometimes people are in such situation that like some people are working for long time on something, but results are not, they are not getting the results. So sometimes they will be in a depressed situation,
Yeah.
or they will leave that thing.
Yeah.
So what in that situation, if we are not getting any result, so what we should think that is like Krishna wants us to choose different path, or should we continuously working on this? If like we want to feed our family also, if we are not getting the results, so but that's our passion.
Yeah.
So what should we do, what in that situation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like how so there is a fine line between endeavor and over endeavor. Right? You are endeavoring for something, and then when do you cross over and it becomes over endeavor? There's a very fine line between the two. Right? So we have to understand when we are getting to the point of over endeavoring, and that's when we seek guidance from our seniors, from our guru if we have one, or from our shiksha guru if we have one, and say that we are running into this situation. Is this because sometimes mind can be very tricky. Sometimes we think that we can attribute very small things in life to Krishna, that, oh, this is not working, Krishna doesn't want it. Krishna is not concerned about these little things in our life. Krishna is happily playing the flute. He doesn't care like what little thing you are struggling in life with. It's true that not even a blade of grass moves without his permission, but we should also not be disturbing Krishna for, oh, my job, my this, my that, right? Because Krishna
But
always.
sometimes it's like we have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Like we have our family's responsibility. So by and we don't know anything else. So by that thing only we can feed our family.
Yeah.
So in that situation, like if we are not getting result, then what? Like we should leave it to Krishna, or should we?
No, we should seek guidance. We should also reevaluate. Like, if the result that we are asking for, is it maybe just my expectation and my desire? Because sometimes, again, like I said, the mind can be very tricky. It can play either side of the coin. So it can trick to make us believe that this is the result which will be perfect for my family, when that may not be the result. Right? So that's why we seek guidance, that this is what I'm endeavoring for. Is this even the correct thing? Because my mind is telling me this is correct, but it may not be the correct from a bigger picture's perspective. Yeah.
And one example I just wanted to.
Yes,
add.
Prabhuji.
So in the same situation, let's say if I have done my duty
Yeah.
Before expecting that, for example, I'm working hard for 30 days. Let's say I'm not getting salary on 31st, right? It shouldn't be like, okay, whenever Krishna grants, they will give. And I'll not ask anyone.
Yes.
I'll not ask my superior and all, which may not be correct. So maybe we have to use our intelligence and maybe, hey, I worked for 30 days, I deserve for this, and I did not get it. Maybe we should ask.
Yes.
That is our
Definitely.
basic expectation or as
Definitely.
part of duty. If
Definitely.
I don't ask, leave upon Krishna and wait, it might take 1 month, 10 months, whatever.
Even
right?
even
So,
to
asking
Arjun.
also our duty.
Absolutely, Prabhu. Even to Arjun, Krishna shows him the universal form. He shows him that he has already killed all these people on the battlefield. But still, Krishna is asking Arjun, give up your laziness, get up and fight. Right? So, never in the spirit of saying we are humble should we tolerate. We can tolerate to a certain extent, but humbleness is not being misused and tolerating to beyond a certain extent. That's not humbleness. So we need to, and that's again, like I was telling Mataji, we need guidance at that point.
Correct.
Like, is this the point of my over tolerating and now I need to take some action? Or this is where like experienced people can help us and say, no, I think still how important is this job, this relationship? I heard again once, and that one Prabhu, he was giving a talk on relationships, because job is very minuscule, but relationships are so much more valuable than our jobs and all these things. And so somebody asked him a question that in a relationship, because he was talking about how valuable relationships are and things like that, so somebody asked him, how much should I tolerate in a relationship? And he gave this example, it still sticks with me. He says, let's say you are driving a car, and let's say that from the opposite side there is a truck coming in your lane, wrong direction. What will you do? Honk and move to the side because it's a truck.
Right.
Now let's say you are again driving, another truck comes. You'll again honk and move.
Yeah.
Similarly, you'll keep doing it, right? You'll not say, oh, I am right and this is my side, I will bang head on into the truck. What will happen? Right? So this is how our relationships are. The more valuable the relationship, sometimes the more more toleration or tolerance we have to show. Similar to how many trucks keep coming from the other side, right? We have to tolerate. And when it becomes to the point that there's no more place to give in, that's when we sometimes take action. But if the relationship is very, very important, then you keep tolerating till you can. Okay.
Or probably you're going in the wrong path. That's the reason why.
Well, maybe you realize you were in the wrong lane.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
After going inside, you do not have any way back.
Okay, let's read this last sentence. This is also very, very nice.
This is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness.
Yeah, that there's no existence besides Krishna. This is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Generally, fear is what takes away peace. Right? We are fearful and that's why we have no peace. But here Krishna is saying that when we are able to come to this realization that there is nothing exists beyond Krishna or besides Krishna, that's when peace will be restored. That's when there will be no fear. Next verse. Sarva karmani manasa Sanyasyaste sukham vasi Navadvare pure dehi Neva kurvana karayan. Mataji, read.
When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of nine gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
Right. So we saw how we are not the only doer, right? So here in this section, starting with this verse, Krishna is going to talk about and give knowledge about the three kinds of doers. The three kinds of doers being the soul, the material nature, and the Lord. So here in this first one, we are saying that, so we are talking about the city of nine gates, which is the body, and we will see what those nine gates are later on in this purport. And we can see that such an embodied living being who controls his nature, he knows that he will reside happily in this body of nine gates, because he knows that he's not the only one who is working or causing the work to be done. There are many other factors involved. Yeah. Okay, Prabhuji or Mataji online, please read the beginning of the purport.
The embodied soul lives in the city of nine gates. The activities of the body or the figurative city of body are conducted automatically by its particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, he can be beyond these conditions if he so desires. Owing only to forgetful of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. By Krishna consciousness, he can revive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from the bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of nine gates. The nine gates are mentioned as below.
Still read, Prabhuji?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of living entity, is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of nine gates, two eyes, two nostrils, two ears, one mouth, the anus, and the genitals. The living entity in his conditioned stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Svetaswara Upanishad. Therefore, a Krishna consciousness person is free from both outer and inner activities of the material body.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. So, first of all, we know now what these nine gates are. So, just like a fort is protected by its gates, right? And when we are talking about a fort, we are very deliberate and conscious about what we let in and what we let out in a fort. So similarly for the body as well, these are our gates. We need to be very, very careful about what we are letting in and what we are letting out. We'll take the example of Arjun. So right, Arjuna was in a Kshatriya body. And initially his thought process was that if I do not fight, I will be happy. But he is in a Kshatriya body. So when he is in a Kshatriya body, he has to act like a Kshatriya. So if he did not fight and renounce the war, and like he was saying, go to the forest, Krishna had already warned him that if you do that, then you will not be happy, because eventually that desire, that propensity to rule is going to overtake you, and then you will be frustrated and strike back. So that's why Krishna is urging him to follow what his body right now allows him or is made to do. But what he should not do or what we should not do, the lesson here for us is we need to act according to our body, but we should not get consumed by it, right? We should not start identifying with it so much that we forget that eventually we are not this body, right? Like if there's a dog, when a soul is in the dog's body, then the only way to express is through barking. Now, if the dog says that I want to talk like a human or I don't want to bark at all, then that's going to create a lot of incompatibility. Then the expression will not happen at all. So a dog, when it's in a dog body, needs to communicate using the body, but not get so consumed by the fact that I am this body, then that's where the problem starts. Right? Any questions so far? We covered a couple of verses. Okay. 14. Na kartratvam na karmani lokasya shrujati prabhu na karma phala samyogam swabhavastu pravartate. Translation? Somebody?
The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
Right. So now we are continuing on this topic of who is the doer, right? So first we said body, right? Now we are saying that spirit or the soul is not the doer. Who is the doer? No, not everywhere, Krishna. In this verse, who is the doer?
The modes of material nature.
All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So here in this verse, Krishna is saying that the material nature is also the doer, right? The embodied spirit, master of the city of nine gates, does not create activities. But what does the city of nine gates does? Desires. We still own the desire, right? So this similar instruction was also there in the 3rd chapter. We will take a look at it in a second here. Let's read from here. Maybe here, up until here. Pragya Mataji.
Sorry. Somehow the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant reactions. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So let's look again one more time at the word by word translation, because Krishna here says, Lokasya Shujati Prabhu. Who is the Prabhu? The master of the city of the body. So who is Prabhu here?
Soul.
The
Soul, right? So it says, nor activities of the people, which means this sentence, Lokasya Srijati Prabhu, means the soul is not the doer. Then it says Swabhava, the modes of material nature, to pravartate, act. So the modes of material nature act. Swabhava. What is Swabhava?
The qualities.
No. Three modes of material.
But what does it mean to us? Like the sky is acting.
No, the acquired vasanas from the life to life.
Yes, the impressions. Because we continue to identify with the body, these impressions form, right? These beginless impressions, which have seemingly have no beginning, because we have been entangled and we have been bound to this body for time immemorial. Like nobody knows. We are called Nitya Badhyas. Nitya means that we do not know for how long. We cannot measure. So since like there's no measure, so these impressions have constantly been forming on our mind, on our body, on our soul. So these impressions create our swabhava.
Like Mataji, our swabhav, this nature is going from like past times also, like it's
Yeah.
passing on.
Yeah.
So if something like some bad swabhav, like we can that we carry that also. So like we can stop that, or it is already written in our destiny that no, this person is like this nature only. So like, so can we stop that thing to pass on another life, or just that nature will be passed on to?
We can dovetail it, because if you crush it prematurely, let's say I have this swabhava of watching TV, right? Films, or just TV. Now this is in my impression. So first is recognizing that I have this shortcoming, because if you don't even recognize, then there's no way you can fix it. And then if you say, okay, no TV at all, then do you think like this is going to work for a very long time?
I think that I'm a very lazy person. So sometimes I feel like, okay, no, now I will not be with the lazy person. I will do work and that. So 1 or 2 days I do actively everything, and then third day.
Now you will double,
I
you
feel
will
like
become double lazy, because you felt that you did so much work.
Yeah.
Now you want to double relax,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you switch off TV like this, then third day you will binge watch most likely, because you are again, when you go into this mode of renouncing prematurely, then those desires creep up much stronger. So we have to learn to dovetail. Okay, I like watching TV. Maybe I can start dovetailing it to watch something meaningful. By the way, Prabhupada, or I don't know who, somebody said that TV is our one-eyed guru. Only one screen, right? One-eyed guru. It entered our households through what? No, even before that, even before advertisements. It entered every household through which? B.R. Chopra's Ramayana.
Yeah.
It entered every household through that medium. The streets used to be empty. I still remember that. On weekend, when it was time for Ramayan, the shops used to not open that day. Everybody was glued to the TV. So that's how this one-eyed guru entered our home. And then Doordarshan happened, then movies happened, and then downhill from there. Right? So anyway, we were sorry, wrong sidetrack. Yes, Proji.
So basically, a very nice example is given if you go to the top of a building and if you jump, and in the middle of the air you cannot decide, whether to stop or not. So once we have acted, we cannot really decide anything. So we can't change our faith. So similarly, once we perform the action, we will get the reaction. So like you said, in the past life, we might have committed certain, actions, and that impressions are there in this life and previous life. So, but we always have a choice. Before we act, we always have a choice whether to do something or not do something. And based on that choice, our destiny or fate is created. Whatever we are doing now will make our destiny in the future, and whatever we have done in the past is what we are now.
Okay.
So we always have that choice, and based on that choice, the law of karma, the law of action, every detail, it determines our destiny. So
exactly.
Like she said, dovetailing, and also you have choice what to do.
Right. So eventually, like our swabhav, so there are actually two parallel tracks. One is swabhav, and then one is value system. Right? Value system tells us what's right and wrong versus wrong, and our swabhav generally directs our action without much thinking. We need to merge the two. We need to merge our value system with our swabhav, because what happens is when we are just aimlessly following our swabhav, we may, like Prabhuji was saying, make all wrong choices. But now with this knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, if we merge that with our swabhav, we start to make right choices. That's why knowledge is very important. Otherwise we just ignorantly keep acting. And like we discussed in the last class, ignorance is not bliss. Not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. So again, we have to realize that this body, in fact, in one of the verses, it is said that this body is a machine, right? We do not start identifying with the machine that we use, right? If we use a fan, we don't, and if we use it a lot, we don't start saying that we are the fan. So this body is a machine. We need to understand that this is given to us for a purpose. If we use it for the right purpose, it leads to liberation. If we use it for just enjoying and continue to enjoy, then the same machine can lead to bondage. Let's read this last sentence.
The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil.
So what is the waves of the ocean here? What is the reference here? Maybe we should read a couple of sentences before that as well. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. So now what are these waves? Yeah, but actually in the context of this verse, these waves are is the material nature. Constantly we are being tossed and turned by this, because even recently, this storm, right? We just were going with the flow, whatever. So this was like an example of being tossed in this ocean of material nature. We are constantly being redirected wherever material nature wants us to head, right? We don't have any control. So he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness, right? And how do we do that? By studying our connection with Krishna. Generally, spiritual master is considered to be a perfect boatman who comes and rescues us from this storm, right? Next verse, 15th verse. Nadate kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritim vibhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muyanti jantavaha. Okay, translation.
How does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities? Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge.
So continuing, building on from the previous one. So material nature is the doer, soul is not. Now here what does Krishna say? Is the Supreme Lord the cause of our activities? No. Krishna is saying no. Supreme Lord is not the cause. How do we understand this? That Supreme Lord is not the cause.
Like I was watching some Maharaj's video. They say that like nobody can hurt us, nobody can do anything. Only our karmas are there that are affecting our lives. So I think that everything what is happening in our life is through by our karmas, not through Krishna.
So, but then if we look at the previous verse, we read Swabhava is the cause, right? Swabhava forces us to act. Why did we get made that way? Whose fault it is?
False identification, Mataji.
False identification with the body, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, or like Mataji was saying, or Prabhu was also just now saying that whatever actions and choices we are doing now helps define our Swabhava, and the impressions either start getting lesser or deeper. If we continue to act in that same way and keep giving in, those impressions keep getting more deeper. If we decide to start making better choices, then eventually we can start erasing slowly those impressions. So who is responsible for the fact that we have certain Swabhava? It's us only. Us only. If we look at like the rain, right, and we see the rain falls evenly impartially on two fields. In one field, just weeds and weeds and weeds are growing, and in one field, very nice crop is growing. Is the rain responsible that in one field the weed is growing and in one field lush crops are growing? Who is responsible?
Farmer.
The person who put the seeds. So similarly, in the same manner, we are responsible for what kind of seeds we put in our previous life, for what we are now reaping the fruit of. There was, yes, Prabhuji.
Maharaj, Radhanath Swami Maharaj gives a very nice example for this. He says if somebody is smoking a cigarette, if somebody smokes like 10 cigarettes a day, then the next cigarette that he smokes, he has the choice whether to smoke that next cigarette or not. But like you said, Swabhava, if he keeps smoking, that will be an impression that will be formed. He will be a chain smoker. But still he has a choice whether to smoke the next one or not.
It becomes harder and harder though.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get into that.
Yeah. Yes. So one thing to keep in mind here, this verse is very, very important, because sometimes it's very easy for us to blame somebody else, or in most cases God, for our own situations, right? That this is happening to me because I am never at fault, obviously, because I am this Mahan Jiva, right? I'm never at fault. It's always the God. Why did you put me in this position? Why did this have to happen to me? Why did this storm have to hit now? Right? I had such important business. We always like to point finger at somebody else. So it's very, very important for us to understand that even though it may seem like it, but in general, it's mostly us who are responsible for what we are going through or will go through. And if we start thinking about it as a way for us to improve and get better at, then we start seeing good in every situation that we are in. Right? So let's read a little bit of the purport.
Mataji,
Yes,
earlier Krishna was saying, leave all results of your karma to me and do just duty.
Yeah.
Do your duty. Now we are saying Krishna does not take any fruits of your action. So how to understand?
So
that?
when Krishna is saying you give up the fruits of, so this is exactly the same example that we discussed last week, about a child trying to give something out of love to the dad on the dad's birthday using dad's money.
Mhm.
Right? So out of affection, we give something to the Lord. But that little thing that we are trying to give to the Lord, does the Lord really need it?
No. he
But
doesn't.
does it make him happy? Yes.
He must.
So similarly, like when we say that we are supposed to give all the fruits of our work to Krishna, yes, that is our duty, because what are we trying to really do? Initially, it is just out of duty, right? The four levels of spirituality that we discussed. First, it's just out of duty. Eventually, the goal is that it transforms, and when enough purification happens, it starts becoming out of love.
Right.
And then when it starts happening because of love, then we will also start to feel lot of reciprocation.
But here we are saying Krishna does not take, right? So how to?
Well, not in this sense. He doesn't assume, like it doesn't
Mataji,
affect
I
him,
think you already mentioned.
right? It doesn't affect anybody's sinful or pious activities. Doesn't affect Krishna.
Okay.
Yeah,
Assume,
Mataji, I want
like,
to add that
yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhuji, go ahead.
I think Krishna simply reflects. It's just his word that he gave, even though he's not the doer or receiver of any of our activities otherwise. But if he simply reflects our attitude towards him.
Yeah. See, here it already says he is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. So these sinful or pious activities that we perform affect us, but not Krishna.
Oh, yeah, it never impacts Krishna.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he's undisturbed. He doesn't care. So that's why it's not that he is the inducer of any of them. It's our own karma, our own desires that leads to whatever situation we are in right now. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desired to be put into certain conditions of life. And thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. Right? Have we heard the story of this couple who saved their whole life to go on the Titanic? And then a dog bit, I think, their daughter or something, and they could not board the ship because of the dog bite and the infection and stuff. And they were cursing so much, right? And then what happened to the Titanic? And then what happened to the couple? Were that same couple who were cursing 2 days ago were probably running around in joy, right? So now here, if we look at this situation, then who is the doer, who is not? Can we say the Lord was partial towards them? That the dog bit and that happened? No, no, it may seem like it, but it's not that the Lord inspired the dog to bite that family's this thing. No, right? This just happened because of their own previous reactions, that the dog became a medium for them to first suffer and then enjoy.
Krishna can be little partial to the.
Well, that's what he says later, but we are not there yet. Okay. So here it says, a living entity is by superior nature full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. Right? So we have this tendency to keep falling back into ignorance. And that's why trying to always develop this knowledge, trying to always, like, it's like when you drive the car, let's say the road is straight. There's no turn at all. Like, have you driven in Texas or California sometimes? Like, the road is just miles and miles straight. Can you say that once you put the steering wheel in the straight position, you can leave the steering wheel? No. It has this tendency to always divert, and you have to always keep correcting. This is also our life. Even when you are going in the right direction, so let's say you are going in the right direction, you have taken up spirituality, still constant correction is needed. You cannot say, oh, now I'm on cruise control. No, you will start going haywire if you don't keep the hand on the steering wheel constantly. And so, when the living entity is bewildered by his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires, but the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation. Right? So a soul desires, the super soul sanctions, and the modes of material nature help to fulfill the desire or not fulfill the desire. So generally, this is how the cycle works, right? Like, the role of the soul is to desire. Then the super soul has to give permission, because you may not have enough pious karma to be able to fulfill that desire. I want to desire to lift my hand. There is a flow chart going constantly. Does this person have the enough karma to be able to lift her hand? Super soul says yes, yes. Okay. Then material nature helps you fulfill that desire. That's why sometimes people, even though they may desire, a person who is been paralyzed also has the same desire that I do to lift my hand. Sometimes their desire is much more stronger than mine, because they haven't been able to live for such a long time. So the desire is equal or stronger or weaker, but then if there's no sanction from the super soul, that action will not be possible. Right? And similarly, the Lord can never be responsible for our own actions and reactions. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes, God disposes. The individual is therefore not omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desires of the minute, independent living entities. So we have the free will to desire. Now, whether that desire gets fulfilled or not depends on our bank balance, right? Okay. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position to service to the Lord, and is thus entrapped by nescience. Right? So what is ignorance here?
Not knowing the knowledge.
Yeah, not knowing the knowledge. Also here, it also means in this context here, because we are talking about knowledge and how ignorance covers real knowledge. So like if ignorance really meant knowledge, then this sentence is not going to make sense because of the knowledge which covers their real knowledge. So here actually ignorance means anarthas. So because we have so many anarthas means something which has no value. Anartha. Anartha means value. Anartha means something which has no value. So ignorance here means that because we have so many anarthas cover our real knowledge. And when we get bewildered because we don't have real knowledge, that's when we forget that our eternal service is to serve Krishna. So that's why through constant hearing and through constant developing of knowledge, in the next verse, let's not get there. In the next verse, Krishna is going to talk about how to come out of ignorance, anarthas, and develop real knowledge. I have something very nice written. I don't know in what context I wrote this. So I don't know. I wrote long time back maybe. Can we do something about the fact that we are responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation? Okay. I understand it now. So okay. So here basically it means that we have to dovetail some of the things, like lust as an example. Can we dovetail lust towards Krishna? No, right? But can we dovetail the fact that we are a Brahmin towards service to Krishna? Yes, right? So some things we can dovetail towards service of Krishna. Some things we have to curtail, like lust. There are the 6 highway robbers: lust, anger, greed, envy. These things we have to learn to curtail. These cannot be dovetailed. But like the varna that we are in or the ashram that we are in, those can be dovetailed in service of Krishna. Like Arjun, he dovetailed. He was a Kshatriya. He dovetailed his psychophysical nature in service of Krishna. But anger, unless we are Hanumanji, most likely we will not be able to dovetail. It will burst, and then not pleasant things will happen. Okay, next verse. ज्ञानानेनु तु तद् अज्ञानम् येषां नासितम् आत्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानम् प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. Yeah, so here now this is beginning. Now we are entering the next section or the next set of verses where now Krishna is going to talk about how knowledge can enlighten. So when, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which the science is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Right? So what we have to do is develop knowledge.
what is nescience here?
Nescience means like ignorance and yeah, basically ignorance. Any other good word for nescience, bro? Ignorance, right? Yeah. Okay, let's read a little bit from the beginning.
Those who have forgotten Krishna must certainly be bewildered, but those who are in Krishna consciousness are not bewildered at all. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvam Gnana Plavena Gna
Jnanangri
Gnanagni Sarva Karmani and Nahi
Jnanena
Gnanena
Sadrisham.
Sadrisham. Knowledge is always highly esteemed, and what is that knowledge? Perfect knowledge is achieved when one surrenders unto Krishna, as is said in the 7th chapter, 19th verse.
Bahunam Bam Janmanam
Ante Gnana
Mam
Mam
Prapadyante.
Prapadyante. After passing through many births, when one perfect in knowledge surrenders unto Krishna, or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him. As everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime, the living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nuisance? Does God become bewildered by nuisance? If so, then nuisance or Satan is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nuisance as the sun drives away darkness.
Yeah, 1 second, Prabhu. So this one, therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. Does anybody remember what this verse is? Yes, 4th chapter, right? Which was 4.29, right? No.
Four 34.
34. Okay, Proji. तद्विधि प्रतिपातेन प्रणिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Does it mean that when we inquire from them submissively, we should follow them blindly?
You should inquire and do it.
Use intelligence to
Yeah.
understand.
Was Arjun following Krishna blindly?
No.
No. Then Bhagavad Gita would never be spoken. If Arjun was following Krishna blindly, he asked so many questions. Bhagavad Gita is all question answers. Otherwise, he would have just fought, right? So this
I'm
is
telling you, just fight.
no. Krishna said multiple times already. He did say, "Get up and fight," but did he just get up and fought? No. He's asking so many follow-up questions. So this is the quality of a perfect disciple, but not in the challenging mood, because when we are challenging, then we don't learn anything. So we have to inquire submissively, but not blindly.
Is it okay to disagree with our gurus sometimes?
Disagreement should be resolved. If it's constantly living in your heart, then it will soon lead to you disrespecting your guru, even without having resolved that conflict. If you resolve that conflict and you have verified that that is still not correct, then there is probably more action to be taken, but many a times we are wrong in our assumptions if it's a bona fide guru. Can we read here?
One has to learn the distinction between God and living entity. Lord Sri Krishna therefore stated in the second chapter 2:1-2 that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in future, even after liberation. At night, we see everything as one in the darkness, but in the day, when the sun is up, we see everything is in its real identity. Identity with individuality is in spiritual life is real knowledge.
Right. So it doesn't mean that after liberation we lose our individuality. We still continue to be who we are, right? We still have our own personality, and that's why there is variety in the spiritual world. That's why we have Lalita Sakhi, who is always in fighting mood, and then we have this Sakhi who is in this serving mood, right? The left party and the right party of Krishna. Otherwise everybody will just merge and they'll be like nothing. It will be monotonous. Everybody is just, then it's more master slave relationship, right? There's no variety. So we were individuals in the past, we are individuals now, and we will continue to be individuals even after liberation. And that's what brings pleasure to Krishna, because everybody brings their own perspective.
How do they refer Mataji?
How do they?
Will they have any names
Who?
as the individuals, whatever we are talking about?
Like us?
Souls, yeah.
So-
after, even after liberation, or yeah, maybe even after liberation, do we still have some names to
So
identify?
we have a Swaroop in the spiritual world.
Okay.
And that's why when we realize what our Swaroop is, it is called Swaroop Siddhi. You've realized what your eternal position is. Right? Like Shukadev Goswami, our Goswamis, right? Many of our Goswamis were Manjaris. Manjaris means, so we have Krishna, gopis, and Manjaris are the ones serving the gopis. So primary gopis, and then, so they all have names. So they all have names. So similarly, actually what Krishna says is that each one of our position in the spiritual world is vacant. Krishna is waiting for us to come back and take back that position. I don't know if it's bulk, but hopefully we all can board some train.
When he put walking, we did not appear.
That's what.
But now we are giving.
So that's why sometimes we will see that we can sometimes associate with some kind of service more than others, right? Like not everybody may be happy with chopping 20 pounds of potatoes, or not everybody may be happy with just pot washing throughout the night, but some people are, right? So not saying you have pot washing service, Prabhuji. So that's why we all dovetail towards specific services, right? Not everybody likes everything, but not saying that this is what our Swaroop is and we should start thinking, oh, I'm eternally the pot washer in Goloka Dham. Not like that. But eventually this constant seva attitude and constant gaining knowledge, applying it, practicing it will lead, hopefully in this lifetime, if not this lifetime, some lifetime in the future, for us to realize what our Swaroop is. And when we realize what our Swaroop is, then it helps us then go back to the spiritual world and just take that position which we left there vacant.
I'm happy to be pot washer.
Well, Uddhav just wanted to be a blade of grass in
Anything
in
is
Golok.
okay with me.
Oh my god, I don't know why my internet is doing this today. Okay, last verse for today. Tad buddhayas tad atmanas atmanas tannishthas tat parayanah parayanah gachanti apunar avritam jnana nirdukha kalmashah. When one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation, right? Which one are we in? Yeah. So from here, my notes say that from here all the way till the 29th verse, now we are going to enter into a section of how to live by focusing on the Supreme. So that's where now we are heading, because what did we see? We saw first that between Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga is, both are equal, but Karma Yoga is easier because here we are engaging versus renouncing. Then we saw that we are not the only doer. Then we saw that, okay, how Krishna is not impacted by our pious and impious activities, how we have to develop knowledge, and then what do we do with the knowledge? We use it and apply it in living a Krishna conscious life. So now we are entering into that section. That's why I just wanted for us to take this one verse so that we can meditate on it throughout the rest of the week, and then we can continue when we meet next week. So let's read a little bit, not a big purport. The Supreme Transcendental.
It is Lord Krishna. The whole Bhagavad Gita centers around the declaration that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the version of all Vedic literature. Paratattva means the Supreme Reality, who is understood by the knowers of the Supreme as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the last word in the Absolute. There is nothing more than that. The Lord says,
Mata paravaram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya.
Impersonal Brahman is also supported by Krishna.
Brahmano hi pratisthaham.
Therefore, in all ways, Krishna is the Supreme Reality, one whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna, or in other words, one who is fully in Krishna's consciousness. He is undoubtedly washed clean of all misgivings and is in perfect knowledge in everything concerning transcendence. A Krishna conscious person can thoroughly understand that there is duality, simultaneous identity and individuality in Krishna, and equipped with such transcendental knowledge, one can make steady progress on the path of liberation.
Liberation. Thank you, Prabhu. So basically, as we enter these next verses, we will see that spiritual life and spiritual knowledge are not meant to be just theoretical. Many a times, many things we study in school were theoretical, have stayed theoretical. No application in our jobs beyond the marks that we got, right? So this is how material education is. It keeps us engaged and busy at that point of time, which is good because our mind needs engagement. But it was theoretical and it stayed theoretical. Unless obviously, like for me, calculus was always theoretical, it stayed theoretical because my dream job was not to become a mathematician. So what integration happened doesn't matter to me anymore. So but spiritual life is not meant to be theoretical, it's meant to be transformative. So if we are not seeing transformation happening as we are going deeper into spiritual life, and as we are progressing or trying to progress, that means something is wrong, we are doing something wrong, because it's meant to be transformative, it's meant to be applied, it's meant to be practical. If things are not changing, or if we are not becoming even a better person, then something is not right. I heard some very nice so we have this one brahmachari, very senior, his name is Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, and he is very, very literate, and he has this wonderful play on words which will just capture your heart. So I heard him say in one like very small reel today that let me see if I can even remember, the goal of spiritual life is to make spiritual life the goal. The goal of spiritual life is to make spiritual life the goal. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, one nice example I'll give from this one is, suppose you have to go somewhere, then you have a map, you have the perfect directions. You can say, okay, you have to take left, right, and this is where I have to reach. But until you execute it, until you start driving, then you will not be able to reach there. So similarly, like you were saying, that we have the theory and everything, but until we implement it in our life, we will not get that benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. So let's meditate on that for the rest of the week. The goal of spiritual life is to make spiritual life our goal. And then we'll resume next week. Any questions online? Prabhu's, Mataji's? If not, then thank you very much for joining. I wish and pray that everybody has a wonderful rest of the week. Is everybody here next week for Thanksgiving? Should we keep the class or should we
I'm traveling
cancel?
to India
And then when will you be back, Mataji?
on 20th December.
Okay, so you'll miss quite some classes. We'll see how if devotees are there, we'll continue. We can catch up on the recordings. Everybody else is here. Shiva Prabhu, you are here. Sridhar Prabhu, you are here. Thanksgiving. Punya Prabhu, you are here. Okay, so then we will continue the class. Maybe it will be a good Thanksgiving gift for all of us to finish chapter 5. We'll see. I don't know, 17 to 29. It may be a stretch, but we'll see if we can cover that many verses. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Pragya Mataji, thank you so much for recording. Please stop the recording. Wish you a very wonderful rest of the week. Hare Krishna.